So recently I picked up this Vax SpotWash primarily to keep my own car in check, as I do clean it weekly but didn't have anything to give the mats or the carpets a more thorough clean. And I also thought it'd be very useful to really deep clean the upholstery and carpets on some other people's cars as well, where just using microfiber towels and brushes without any extraction just wasn't going to cut it. So I'm going to be demonstrating a few different ways of using this Vax SpotWash on quite a few different cars and taking you through some of the pros and cons too. Now what I'm not trying to do in this video is show you the machine on the world's dirtiest interiors that have had all sorts of spillages chucked all over them. What I want to show you here is interiors on daily driven cars that are around 10 years old that have an average level of dirt, and attempt to show just how much dirt and grime is lingering in the fabric of what would seem like pretty well maintained interiors, to help you decide if this machine is a worthwhile investment if you do really just want to look after your interior, and perhaps sit into a similar boat to myself where you clean some other people's interiors too. So I'm going to start off with the key features and what's included. So this Vax SpotWash is pretty lightweight and weighs 3.89 kilograms. So you get a 1.5 litre tank for your clean water or your cleaning solution, and a 1 litre dirty tank for whatever's getting extracted. Unfortunately the hose on this is quite short, so it's only about 1.5 metres, but you do get a decent 4.5 metre mains cable. It comes with 2 attachments, so one for hard floors and a multi-purpose brush tool, and those can just be easily clipped on and off the nozzle, and then the nozzle itself just clicks onto the hose. It also comes with 250ml of the cleaning solution. So Vax give you a recommended dilution to use with their cleaner, and for a small area, which is what I'm using here, it recommends 500ml of water to 125ml of solution, and there are markings on the side of the tank to indicate the measurements. So there were a couple of design issues that I did encounter here. Firstly, the amount of water they tell you to add in millilitres versus the marking on the side doesn't equate to the same amount. And secondly, you fill it up from the sort of the side of the bottle rather than on top, which means that if you want to really measure it up against those markings, you have to keep adding a little bit and then tilting the bottle. So there are a few different ways to use this machine, and I'm going to be using a few cars to demonstrate them. I'm going to be demonstrating the first method on these seats, which I know haven't been wet vaxed in at least 5 years and possibly even longer. These particular seats weren't horrifically dirty, there was just a few stains that are probably from sweat and other marks on the seats that were making them look dirtier. So as I showed earlier, I filled up the tank with the recommended solution, and then I sprayed this onto the seats, let it dwell for a couple of minutes, and then sprayed a little bit more on, and then agitated it using the brush that's attached to the nozzle. Once I've done this thoroughly, I then extracted that solution and repeated this process 3 times in total until I was happy that the foam that was being extracted was white and didn't show any signs of dirt. Now whilst this method does still clean the seats pretty effectively and does extract a lot of dirty solution, my issue with this method is that there's still going to be products left within the seats. No matter how much you try to extract the solution that you're putting down, it always still will be slightly foamy because you aren't rinsing it through with any sort of clean water. And as a quick note here, all the sort of before and after photos I'm taking are when the seats are completely dry. So the next method that I'm going to be showing here are on these seats, which are a little bit dirtier than the last ones. There's a lot of sweat sort of stains, and just generally these seats aren't looking in great condition. Again, not horrific, but I know that these haven't been extracted in at least 10 years. So instead of using the Vax solution in the tank, I instead filled it up with just clean warm water. I then used Green Star All-Purpose Cleaner at 10% and sprayed that all over the seats using a pump sprayer. Once that had been allowed to sit there for a couple of minutes, I then agitated it using a drill brush. So I just picked up a set of these from Amazon. It's the soft variety as I didn't want to use anything too harsh, but I'll pop a link to the set that I picked up in the description. Once I'd worked the solution into the seats, I then extracted it, and then I did repeat this process again just to make sure that the seats were properly cleaned. Once I was happy that the foam coming off the seats was white, I then actually sprayed down some of the clean water and then worked it in using the brush attached to the nozzle. And the idea here was to try and get as much of that product out as possible. So I repeated this process a few times until I was happy that it was just clean water without any foam being extracted. So I found that this was my preferred method of cleaning the seats, and to demonstrate it again I used another car, and this car again hasn't been wet vaxed in at least 10 years. As you can see, the seats actually don't look that bad, and what I wanted to show you here was sort of a 50-50 split test where I wet vaxed just one side of the seats using the method I showed previously to see how much of a difference it actually makes. Not only did the method result in some visual improvement, what I found most noticeable really was the difference in texture between the side that had been cleaned and hadn't. And I could notice this when I sort of ran my nails over the surface, so I'll stop talking now so you can kind of hear the difference. And for further evidence that this process was definitely worth doing on this seat, here's what was extracted from just half a seat on the first pass. Again, to demonstrate that probably the fabric in your car isn't as clean as you think it might be if you've never used one of these machines before, I've got my own mats here which I did wet back around a year ago, and ever since they have been hoovered weekly, brushed through with either an all-purpose cleaner or an interior cleaner, and then wiped with a damp microfiber towel, so they always stay looking fairly fresh. And you can see the tank here when I'd finished just extracting one mat. Even though they looked very clean to begin with, there was still a lot of dirt really sort of embedded into the fabric. Now, another method that I have seen to give mats a deeper clean, and it's a little bit more extreme, is to get the pressure washer involved as well. So I've got these mats here that haven't been wet vaxed in several years, but have been kept in relatively good condition. So I started with the same approach of using the all-purpose cleaner and the drill brush to work it in. And then I used the pressure washer to try and blast out as much of that product as possible, and also to wet the mats a little bit more thoroughly. Then I went in with the drill brush again to give them a deeper clean, and then used the wet vac to extract all that solution. So this method of course is a little bit more extreme and probably only necessary on mats that are very, very dirty. However, I can say it was pretty effective and really did give them a thorough clean. I know a lot of people are going to be worried at this point how long they took to dry. Because I was able to extract most of the water, I just sat them out in the sun, and half an hour later they were actually completely dry. One feature of this machine that I do really like is the self-cleaning function. So to use this, you simply just disconnect the hose, plug it into the little self-cleaning port, and then turn it on whilst holding the nozzle in place, and it just flushes through everything from your clean tank into your dirty tank so that the hose is cleaned properly. You can also detach the little plastic covering on the nozzle to give that a clean too. It also packs away quite nicely, so the hose can be threaded around the machine so it's neat and tidy, and there's also a place where the mains cable can be wrapped around as well. So I did just want to quickly highlight what I think are a couple of disadvantages of this machine. Now firstly, the hose on it is very small, being only 1.5 meters. Now that means when you're using the machine it has to be at least either in the interior itself or right next to it, which can be a little bit awkward. Also, the dirty tank in particular, being only a litre, is pretty small and does fill up reasonably fast. I find that I can extract between 1 and 1.5 seats and fill that tank, which does only take a few seconds to do but just makes it a little bit less convenient. But what I will say is that this is one of the least expensive machines of its type, and it does do a very good job. It might take a little bit more persistence on particularly dirty seats and mats. However, particularly if you're using a drill brush, I think that you can definitely get some good results out of it. To me, I think it was a worthwhile investment. Even if I just used it for my own car and didn't use it on any other people's, I think it still would have been worth buying for myself. So I will pop a link in the description to where you can find one of these. If you have enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could drop it a like, and thanks for watching.